So a friend requested I explain a little bit about the train system in Japan, especially with the current IC card issue. The train system in Japan can be very confusing for many tourists. The stations aren't great about signage, and you may have one sign with English, and then along the same path there's one that only has Japanese. The first thing to note with this is that there are multiple train companies within larger cities, especially within Tokyo. Some of these companies have agreements with each other where they're kind of related, such as the two subway systems, the Tokyo Metro and the Toei subway system, are very interconnected, and you don't usually need to worry about which one of those you're on. However, for the overland trains, there's a lot more where they're not as connected. Your major overland company is JR, but there's also other companies such as Odakyu, Tobu, Tokyu, Yurikamome, Rinkai. There's a bunch. So you'll need to pay attention to which company you need to travel on. If you have a JR pass, that's just for the JR companies, and they usually have their own kind of system that will help you figure out which trains the JR pass is accepted on. For anyone else, you're going to have to pay a little bit more attention to where you're at. This can also be confusing because of the stations themselves. Some areas, such as the Tokyo station, have multiple train companies in the same building. So the Tokyo station has the Shinkansen, has the JR lines, has the Metro lines, all in the same building, though it can be very confusing switching from one line to another, especially in Tokyo station. But then you'll have other areas, such as Asakusa, that have different stations for different train companies, but they all can have the same name. So for Asakusa station, for example, that can mean 3 different places, all called Asakusa station. Depending on what line you want, you'll want a different Asakusa station. Google Maps is your friend when trying to figure out how to get from point A to point B for the most part. It's a little bit off on times, or sometimes it'll give you some very strange routes, but it will get you there eventually. The one thing to sort of watch out for as far as the times are concerned, it's not always going to be super accurate because they generally use the main schedule. They're usually pretty good about delays, especially on JR lines, but for some of the other lines that don't update their delays as quickly online, it can be a little bit harder. The main things that you want to look at is which line is it, what is the destination, and is it a local or a rapid train. Local trains will stop at all stations, whereas rapid trains will only stop at certain stations. So if you want to go to a rapid station but you get on a local, it's going to take you longer. But if you want to go to a local station and you get on a rapid, it's not going to stop there and you're going to have to backtrack. So make sure that you're checking the destination, the line, and what kind of train it is. If the time is off, as long as those other 3 things are the same, it's not going to be an issue. So as far as paying for your trip, the best way is through an IC card. However, Suica and Passmo, the big names for Tokyo, are not currently selling cards due to the IC chip shortage. If you are in Japan for less than a month, you can get tourist Suica still at Haneda. I believe those are only good for 28 days and automatically deactivate after that. So that's still an option for short-term tourists, but for long-term people, it's a little bit more complicated. Other places, such as Osaka or Kyoto, which have the Ikoka card, or Pitepa card, or Nagoya, which has the Manaka card, they are still selling those cards. However, you cannot get an IC card as easily in the Tokyo area or in most of the northern parts of Honshu. I believe there's a few cities up north in Aomori and Akita that are still selling them, but if you're in Tokyo, you're not going to be able to buy at any of the local stations. So what can you do about that? Well, your first option, if you have an Apple device or an Android device that you bought in Japan, is you can use the mobile Suica app. The Apple phones has to be, I believe, above 7. Anything older than that won't work. And Android, anything not bought in Japan, probably won't work. This is because Japan uses the Felica NFC system, which is not used in basically any country outside of Japan. So most phones from outside Japan will have the NFC, I believe it's A or B types, and Felica is a type F. So if you have an Apple or you have a Japanese phone with Android, you can use the mobile Suica app. But if you don't, it becomes a little bit more complicated. So basically, you only have two real choices if you are in Tokyo and you don't have an Apple or Japanese Android. Your first choice is to buy a card secondhand. You can find this on sites like Mercari. I believe there's probably also some on Amazon, though usually those are more expensive. It does not need to be a Suica or Passmo card. Those are on Mercari for generally about 1,500 to 2,500 yen. But you can get any of the cards from the Suica family that you could buy elsewhere, such as the Manaka card or the Ikoka card. And those are cheaper on Mercari, usually within the 1,000 to 1,500 range from what I've seen checking. It's more than the 500 yen deposit if you're buying your own card, and of course it's a deposit, so you can get some of that back at the end. But it's going to save you a lot of hassle, and it will save you some money because tickets are rounded to the nearest 10 yen, whereas if you're paying with an IC card, that's not rounded at all. So you will save a couple of yen per trip most of the time. And when you are transferring between two companies, then that can become even more because you're not paying to have two separate tickets. So that would personally be my recommendation, is to get a Manaka or a Ikoka card off of Mercari if you can make a Mercari account. That's its own separate thing that can be difficult. You do need a Japanese phone number to do that, and you of course will need an address where things can be sent. Your second option is to travel to a city that is still selling IC cards. So if you're intending to visit Nagoya, Osaka, Kyoto, Hiroshima, or some other southern Japanese city, you may want to do that sooner rather than later so that you can buy an IC card from one of their machines, which you can then use in Tokyo. So anything ending with a ka, basically, is part of the Suica family and is going to be usable anywhere on mainland Japan. Okinawa is a little bit different. I know Suica is still good there, but not as sure about some of the other ones. But until you get a card, you're going to have to use the paper tickets and buy a ticket for every trip and for every individual company. So you'll want to plan your route to have as few company changes as possible, which can be a little bit difficult, but if you're using Google, it will tell you which company everything is with. Usually there's a little JR logo if it's JR. If it's not JR, it'll say, Toyoko line, KO line, something like that. JR goes to most locations, and I said the metro lines are connected, so as long as you stay only metro or only JR, you'll be okay for the most part. There are some areas that are difficult to get to if you're not using JR or metro, such as the Odaiba area, which is Yurakamome, or anywhere outside of the main city of Tokyo. When buying a ticket, there is a few things that you need to note. First, you'll have to buy your ticket at the machine counter for the line that you are going to travel on. Some stations will have ticket counters for multiple lines, like I said, so you'll need to make sure that whatever line you're going on is the counter that you're buying it from. Inside Tokyo City, most of this is done with a machine where you just have to look at the map above the machine, find your destination, find the price there, and then buy the ticket for that price. If you are transferring, you'll just need to find the station that you're going to transfer at, buy the ticket to that station, and then when you get to your transfer station, buy the ticket again for your destination. There are no round-trip tickets. You are going to have to buy a ticket for each trip. Since most people living in Japan have IC cards, there's usually not a bad line or anything to buy a ticket, so that shouldn't take you too long, but it can be a little bit difficult to find the location with those machines sometimes. For buses, you should see a little machine dispensing a numbered ticket when you get on the bus. Make sure you take one of those. That will tell you which stop you got on the bus at. At the front of the bus, on the top, there should be a big sign with different numbers and different prices. That will tell you your fare from the stop you got on to whichever stop you are currently at. So if your ticket says number 4, you'll look at the price under number 4 to find your fare to the stop you're getting off at. You will need to put that ticket as well as the fare into the till at the front of the bus when you get off. It will not give you change, so you'll have to get change at the side of the till before you get off the bus. Try to do that a little bit in advance just so you're not delaying anything when you do want to get off. If you don't get a ticket, you're going to have to pay the no fare charge, which is usually whatever the highest fare is, so do make sure you get that ticket when you get on.